Hello, and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today, I'm talking all about flexible nutrition, flexible dieting, tracking macros, calories, why tracking feels so hard. Do I need to track forever? How can I manage tracking so that it doesn't take over my life? How can I make it easier? And how can you still get results regardless? Let's face it, a lot of people find tracking extremely overwhelming. Scratch that. A lot of people find nutrition in general very overwhelming. There's so many choices to make. You don't know which one's the right one for you. There are so many rules out there. Don't eat carbs, don't eat this. Chocolate's bad for you. I overate as a binge. Now I ruined it all. There are so many thoughts that come around nutrition, around dieting in general. Think about the fact that you wake up every morning and same battles every single day, struggling with food choices, and you're overwhelmed by the idea of tracking. And more than anything, you're frustrated by diets that just never stick. But what if I told you the problem isn't about being disciplined or your willpower? It's just the way that we've been taught to look at food. Imagine this. You're holding a puzzle, trying to put together a puzzle, but the pieces just don't seem to fit. You've been told the picture is supposed to look a certain way, or you have a certain idea in your head of what this puzzle is meant to, by the end, look like. Perfect portions, you have no room for error with this puzzle. Everything is hinging on this. Yet, every time you try to force the pieces together, you get extremely frustrated. The thing is, you're trying to piece together a puzzle by rules and what seems to make sense, like, oh, this is a really dark puzzle piece. These are dark puzzle pieces. Maybe these should go together. Like you're just trying to piece together and Frankenstein different rules, kind of like when you Frankenstein different pieces of information and advice that you get online. But you don't even know what the big picture of it all is. You're trying to put it together based on the pieces themselves versus zooming out and looking at the whole picture. If you want my how to figure out your macros, how to work out your maintenance, how to understand this stuff guide, then DM me macros on Instagram and I will send you my macro guide. Zoom out so you can see the perspective. And then once you have the greater perspective, we can zoom in to get a better perception of our current state. So then we can actually move forward. And then we can actually focus on the individual pieces, the individual actions. Because we can't really piece together what actions we want if we don't know where we are now with our puzzle piece compared to where we want to go. And what exactly is it that is keeping us stuck? Is it the fact that we're trying to piece together too many of the dark things when some of the dark things should be in a different area, et cetera, et cetera? With all that being said, I want to flip the script. I want to explore with you a new way of seeing nutrition, tracking, and flexible dieting. Whether you've struggled with food tracking, felt overwhelmed by diet culture, I also get frustrated. So many people say, black coffee is diet culture. Picking the chicken salad is diet culture. No. It's gone a little bit too far in that direction. And that's exactly what I want to flip the script on. I want to teach you. I want to empower you so that you are confident in your choices and you don't feel chained to your phone 24/7. You learn how to eat. And that's exactly the approach that I take with my clients. I don't want you to believe that you need to be perfect to succeed. I want to inspire you to think differently so you can thrive and have the tools that give you that confidence. When someone says, I find tracking so hard, what I've come to realize is that tracking to them has represented a history of restriction, deprivation, or perfectionism. It's the memory of feeling judged by themselves or by a coach for not hitting macros exactly. For example, there was this time when I used to beat up on myself every single time that I would go over at nighttime, or I would live in fear that I would eat way too much during the day and then I'll leave no macros for nighttime, go over, and then beat myself up for that. And then there are other situations where people think tracking macros means eating chicken and broccoli every single meal. And then there are the clients that have come to me from coaches extremely burnt out because check-ins were based on percentage of compliance. What if we reframe tracking away from punishment to empowerment, education, away from micromanaging every little bite into a method, a system for building awareness and confidence, for teaching you how to eat in different situations. Yes, here's the hardest part to accept though, and I'm really hoping that you can stick with me through this, because tracking is going to be tedious at first, simply because it's different from what you know. You're not used to putting food onto a scale. You're not used to tracking it in your app, but it can be made easier once you learn these systems and once you develop your own awareness around what works for you. Despite it being tedious, if you contrast that to following diet rules that only add more obsession, restriction, even worse, falling on and off, eating bad foods, beating yourself up, regaining the weight, now having food anxiety, social anxiety, not knowing how to navigate certain situations like the holiday season. And downloading meal plans over and over just keeps you stuck when you can't stick to what that meal plan says. Because what are you going to do? It doesn't matter. I can't eat this meal that's on the plan, so I'm just going to have whatever YOLO. It's just going to be a quote unquote cheat meal, which we should not be using those terms. Learning how to approach nutrition is how you will further enhance your results, because all of these plans just teach you how to lose weight. Then what? We need to learn these things, kind of like learning how to play an instrument. The more that you practice that instrument, the better you get at it. And then things start to make sense. For example, you learn some chords, you learn the C scale, and then you learn the A scale. You usually learn your scales and your, I think they're called arpeggios. I can't remember. The letters like C, E, G. That was bad voicing. But you learn the scales and then you learn your arpeggios. Then you start to make your own songs based on those scales, based on those arpeggios, but you can't do that until you actually learn the scale. You can't read certain pieces of music until you learn those scales. That is just like understanding how to put together different meals. Like you learn the different concepts of nutrition, and then you can put it together in terms of, okay, now I know how to piece together a breakfast out with my friends or a brunch out. I know how it fits into the context of my whole meal plan. I had a client who came to me who said, I hate tracking, it's stressful. Then I dug deeper with her. What she realized is it wasn't tracking that she hated. It was the idea that she could never eat pizza and chocolate again, the fear of failing or of being perfect. Like I said, tracking doesn't mean you can't eat these things. It empowers you to realize that having the chocolate, having the pizza, having a quote unquote blowout, if you actually track the blowout for the first time versus, oh my God, I was so bad, you realize that it wasn't the blowout that actually blew you out. It was what happened next. It was shooting yourself with a second arrow and berating yourself. You can't change it now, but you can change what you do moving forward if you then bring that with awareness. I had another client come to me thinking that it meant to be strict to the T with macros because that's what her old coach said. So she was so scared that if she couldn't be consistent with hitting them to the exact T, she wasn't going to get the results that she wanted, as great of results. Or if she wasn't able to track things perfectly, or if she didn't know how to track the food, she just wouldn't track it. So it felt very restrictive to her. I had another client come to me from a coach who's tracking progress. It was like I said, literally just, I want your scale weight, yes and no, were you accurate to the macros, give me your photo updates. It's funny because if you download any macro apps, any calorie tracking apps that have like inbuilt coaching to like change your macros, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, they do the same thing when progress is a lot more than that. And food is a lot more than that. Shifting macros doesn't work the way that apps teach you to. They just like keeping you entertained and bought in so you can keep paying them. So yes, tracking is very stressful when it's tied to that, especially when it's tied to diet trauma, like under eating, cutting out your favorite foods, and chasing perfection. Have you ever wondered why diets fail? And here is why tracking works tremendously. And you don't need to do it forever. If you learn the principles of nutrition, you'll be able to pick it up and put it down. Or if you're someone like me and some of my clients, you enjoy tracking and you'll track your food and then you'll learn a system so that you don't have to live on the app. I flexibly track. But if I needed to change something drastically, then I would track. If I needed to do a fat loss diet, then I would track because I don't want to just wing a fat loss diet. I don't want fat loss to take longer than it needs to, which I won't be doing one for a very long time. But failing diets isn't because you don't have discipline or willpower. I would question, is it because they demand too much of you without meeting you where you are? Because flexible dieting isn't about perfection. It's about understanding. The foundation itself is simple. The big picture of the puzzle is simple. Know your calories, prioritize your protein, and build meals that are easy, predictable, and repeatable. It's not about eating whatever you want, if it fits your macros or if it fits your mouth, whenever you want, but understanding that food is a lot more than numbers. It's fuel, but beyond that, it's also nourishment and joy. It is also social health. If you are enjoying a meal out with friends, then that is a part of your social health, and you can't have health and wellness without your social health being up there. Again, think of flexible dieting like learning a language. At first, you might rely on it with strict rules, grammar, sentence structure. I remember that I did this with my driving test where I was like, everything to the book because I'm going to get examined by this driving instructor and I need to make sure I pass my test. But then as soon as you get on the road, some rules tend to just, you forget what was in the book. I'm a driver Nazi, rules. And that's the same in tracking. Start off more precise. It feels a lot more granular, but over time it becomes a lot more intuitive. You become a lot more flexible with it and you create your own style/structure and you tighten up where needed. Kind of like in job interviews or presentations, you would tighten up your grammar. You would tighten up the way that you speak versus when you're with friends. Kind of like the same thing. Like I said, when I'm in a diet phase, I would tighten it up. But the flexible of flex dieting isn't just about whatever fits your macros. It's about principles and understanding how your choices impact other things like appetite, like satiety, like cravings. I will most likely do a podcast on appetite and why it's not something you want to rely on. But nutrition to your goals is like a GPS. You have a destination and tracking is the way to get there. Some days you stick to the fastest highway. Other days you take the scenic detour, but you're still heading in the right direction. And sometimes you take the really long-winded detours and setbacks and roadworks. Now, what I mean by that is sometimes you just take the straightforward path and it's simple, it's easy, not a lot of thinking to it, just go straight. The other times it's got a lot more calibration. You're making choices that can negatively impact your mood, your appetite, your energy, your performance. This is where understanding the spectrum of your choices in terms of what are your goals, what's your psychology around food, what's your lifestyle like, what is your history with tracking, to then understand where you start with your nutrition. It might start with just going from mindless eating to now let's just have some mindful eating. Let's look at what's on the plate and have training wheels on, for example. It might be just plate portions for some people, where half the plate is veggies and fruit. A third of it is a lean protein source. And then you got your starchy carbs. It could be as simple as that. Or you could start to then guesstimate hand portions of, okay, so I know that about this much, which I'm kind of showing my palm. This much as a size of chicken is about 100 grams. It's just getting cluey on what a portion of protein looks like for you or what an ideal portion of starchy carbs looks like for you. Then it can go into tracking macros and calories. But on the other end, there are people that would rather just have a meal plan, which is where a lot of my clients used to start, if they don't already have the basics. Because I got into coaching way before macros was a thing, way before it was like this huge hype where you track your macros. Then from the meal plans, I taught them how to be flexible with the meal plans. Like here are things that you can swap that are similar. Here's ways that you can make your meals differently. Or you can just take different components of different meals and put them together. Like you can see that there's bread here and you can see that there's other ingredients here. You can bring the bread up from lunch into your breakfast to make French toast, as an example. Or teaching different substitutes, like the bread, you can sub for like potato because they're both carbs. You can sub that for rice because that's another carb as well. And that's kind of the way that I prefer doing nutrition in creating my own flexible meal plan that I make for my own week. And then I know how to sub things in and out. So it's like, I don't feel like tuna today, I'm going to have kangaroo. I don't feel like kangaroo today, I'm going to have chicken. I don't feel like rice today, I'm going to have pasta and have potatoes. And it's just knowing how much of each you can substitute. Okay, so how much potato is equal in calories to this rice? And to me, that is freedom through mastery. You're understanding what is in your foods. You're understanding how to piece together this puzzle. You've gone from trying to piece together these little puzzle pieces to zooming out and understanding the bigger picture. So then you can zoom back in again and have a lot more structure and clarity behind piecing together these different elements. And this is why a coach is your timeline. Time machine. Many of us have blind spots as it comes to why we're not seeing results. Often it has very little to do with the numbers and more often to do with, okay, you have this way of approaching your food and you understand how to do it, but what is stopping you from being consistent with that? Where do you fall off? Is it social situations? Is it the fact that you're trying to eat too little calories for what your body can handle? Is it that you're always trying to go into diet mode? Is it that you always fall off because you have cravings? When PMS hits, you want to eat more food. You get into the, I just want carbs. I just want to let loose. I don't want to stay restricted for this for too long. It's working through those different things. One client believed that fat loss was a game of deprivation. The less they ate, the faster they lose weight. They didn't see how undereating led to low energy. Their workouts were inconsistent. They were ravenous, and then binge cycles began, and they had more cravings. I helped them understand that eating enough of the right foods was the key to fueling their body and making them feel better. It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty tank of gas. You can start strong, but you'll break down before you reach the finish line, before you realize there's no finish line, and you kind of have to keep on going. In terms of you get to the end of whatever phase, like if you're in a fat loss phase, you get to the end of the fat loss phase, and then you need to learn how to maintain it. You don't just drop off after you finish a marathon. I had another client, like I mentioned, who was obsessed with perfection. Every gram had to be tracked. As soon as they went off plan or they couldn't stick to the plan, they spiraled into guilt and shame. Success doesn't require precision 100% of the time. It's all about just being better, understanding how these different elements fit in. Like, yes, if we're not seeing results, then we need to tighten up a little bit, but we need to zoom out before we zoom back in. Like, zoom out. What is the problem we need to solve for? Okay, let's zoom into that problem and solve for it. What is stopping you from XYZ? What is getting in the way? Let's trace back from there. Is it that you're tired after work? Is it that you had a really emotional day? You had an argument with a friend? Work on habit formation, habit shifting. And I had a client who literally said, I thought tracking was the actual hard thing here, but I realized it's how I viewed tracking, because she only saw tracking from the eyes of I'm tracking to lose weight. She never saw tracking as something bigger, as in learning how to eat. She came to me after crushing a 12-week fat loss challenge, and she felt so lost afterwards because there was no structure anymore. So then she just reverted back into old habits. She didn't learn what to do after that. When you have a guide, not just a map to look at, it is so much easier to be like, okay, well, now I want to see this place, and then I want to see this place. You mentioned this place is really good. Let's go there. Like, that person has experience. They can guide you through, like, they can tell you what to avoid because they're like danger zones, and they can guide you to like the really nice places that you want to see. We focused on creating a vision bigger than just the scale and understanding that doing consistent weight loss challenges isn't the goal. Having weight loss transformations is the worst thing you can do, because it's like, why do you need to keep having weight loss transformations and losing the same weight? The goal is to have continual transformation where you continue to get better, not just keep losing the same weight. I don't know, call me crazy, but that's kind of what I think most people need. It's just about learning how to make tracking work for you. And I mentioned this already, so I'm going to sum it up to give you some good take homes for this. And that's simplify your meals, stick to routines, repeat meals, have simple recipes, fewer ingredients, know how to piece together meals. Protein, color, so that's fruit and veg, and then starchy carbs. Trying to make it too complex or trying to log in a million different ingredients into your app just makes it really overwhelming. Stop tracking the herbs and spices. Stop tracking the sauces that are like 10 calories. But I will have to say, be really careful when it comes to the sauces, because there are some that say 0 calories and 10 calories, but then when you look on the back, it says 5. And if you actually looked at your portion size, it's about 60 mils. And the same goes for like oils and butters. There is no such thing as a calorie-free or low-calorie oil or dressing, even if it's a spray. Like, oil and butter cannot be low calories. It is impossible for it to be, unless they're telling you to weigh like half a gram or one tiny spray. This is exactly what tracking does. It brings you awareness. That's how to make tracking work for you. Use it as a means of awareness, noticing how foods make you feel. Set minimums and ranges, not hitting perfect targets. For my clients, I set a minimum protein target, minimum vegetable/fruit target, and ranges for carbs and fats. Or you can let carbs and fats vary. But the more specific that you want to get with performance and body composition, the more that you would want to aim towards a carb minimum, especially pre-workout, a carb minimum there. Understand that it's what accumulates over time. If you go over one day, that's fine. You can balance it out the other days. But if it's just that one day, I wouldn't really let that worry you. It averages out if you make it average out. And this is where macros kind of works. It's that very thing. It's flexible. You need structure. That's the biggest take home from all of this, because my goal with my clients is moving away from tracking as this obsessive tool, but more so as a pick up and put down and track loosely, unless in fat loss phases. Like, I want you to be able to track your food and not feel so chained to it, to be able to repeat meals. The like more consistent you are with the tracking, the better it is, because now you know what you are doing, but it's not feeling so chained to it because you know how to be flexible within that. You know how to simplify your tracking. Instead of tracking every single vegetable that you eat in a meal, just track carrots. And that makes it so much easier. Copy the meals across. Having that structure allows you to track so much more flexibly. And another thing is that hunger, like I mentioned, isn't something to always rely upon, which is where tracking can be really helpful as well. Because in a fat loss phase, there will be a lot more hunger, but you can also feel hungry when you're eating enough food. Even in a surplus, you might experience some hunger. I want you to think back to the puzzle. The pieces didn't fit because the picture in your head was wrong. And sadly, in so many areas of our journey, we are always trying to solve for the wrong puzzle or forcing hard work, like working really hard, trying to make this thing fit without just stopping, slowing down. No. Stop grinding through with the wrong recipe. Like, zoom out, get a good understanding of what you're cooking first or what you're putting together first. And then we can zoom in on certain areas and enhance the puzzle. So I hope that helps, because with awareness comes control. With control comes freedom. And control does not mean restriction. Control does not mean deprivation. It does not mean going keto. It doesn't mean cutting out all your carbs, because tracking is too tedious. So you have to have these strict rules that just leave you spiraling in a diet cycle. This is why tracking works, because it allows you to have that flexibility. It allows you to see that chocolate isn't bad, that you can eat the donut, that you can have, that you can have that extra freaking cookie without beating yourself over it because it was only 90 calories. Whereas it was like, I screwed up. I undid all my progress. I ate something bad. I binged on one cookie. It's like, no, that was 90 calories. I'm fine. I'll just reduce this from my dessert and that's great. I'll get on with my life. Or it's just 90 calories. That's not going to set me over. It's one day. But if I keep shooting myself with a second arrow / beating myself up over it, that is then when we tend to just end up worse off. So I hope that helped. Anything else? Shoot me a message. Let me know. And I'll talk to you soon.